Good evening. It's 2100 UTC on this Sunday, 20th of October, 3305. I'm your host, Jeff Ryan, and welcome to the Prismatic Congress. The Prismatic Congress is a broadcast by the Prismatic Imperium based in Cubio, an active player group that makes up part of the Ashling Deval community and specializing in role-playing. First, the general game news. The Scourge launched on the 10th of October. On the 17th of October, Phase 1 was completed and we entered Phase 2 with the Rockforth Fertilizer, which we discussed a little bit last week, has been behind the... Sorry about that. Rockforth Fertilizer, which is the same fertilizer behind the exploit, has been confirmed as the cause of the blight. Initial food shortages were offset by a recent trade deal and ISO Noverve systems, but the blight symptoms have since been reported in hundreds of systems. While we investigate the reasons for this rapid spread, preventing further fertilizer distribution is vital. So the new CG involves bringing the fertilizer to be disposed of. Also in the news from Reddit, there has been a popular thread. Does anybody feel like a beefy campaign would do? With one commentator, TCM831, saying, yeah, I've always wanted them to replace the current rank grind with a TIE Fighter Wing Commander-esque mini-campaign for the Feds and Imps. If it was possible, it'd be such a better way to handle ranking up and be so much more engaging. Now for the branch news. First, Commander Missler from Vigor.
Thank you. So for the branch of Vigor news, I'd like to first mention that I'm currently participant in the site expedition. So that means I can't participate in our objectives for this week until we're back. But of course, I'll keep monitoring everything I can and stay up to date on management decisions. And I'm back into action as soon as possible, and we're back. Then there is something I think is hopefully obvious, but I still want to mention it here, which is the current Vice Warden situation. Stemming from the role play and how it developed, there was a little dilemma that I think I found a relatively clever solution to, which is that we have now in character Catherine Edmonds as the Vice Warden, and out of character Benjamin, of course, continues to be the Vice Warden with especially caretaking the Adamantine Union. This separation, I hope, is not too confusing because I think having an NPC character in the Vice Warden position avoids confusion as well as allows us to continue with the roleplay. Lastly, I intend to post an announcement for an event in the coming week. I'll talk about this more in the next podcast, and you'll obviously have the chance to read up on the details in the announcement. But a heads up, it will be a PvP event using ship-launched fighters. And the purpose of the event is just to have fun and learn to fight with other humans behind the stick, controlling your enemy ships. And if you ever wanted to shoot your Lord Warden, this is the perfect time. The event will likely take place in the mid of November. Now over to the branch of site with Lord Headmaster Techeron.
Well, I'm glad that here, the third annual site expedition, no one has to die, like in your event. Well, as you've heard before, not only Müsle and me, yes, I left my office for once, but also a lot of other known individuals from the PI are currently on their way in the third annual site expedition. There are 7 waypoints to get to, and we've already reached the second one. Yesterday we had a lot of fun and nice sightseeing. We didn't find anything interesting yet, but I'm sure there are going to be some more waypoints that will provide us with excellent views and biological phenomena. This site expedition will take another week. There are 7 waypoints and some of them actually contain more than one nebula, so we plan to stay a bit longer here. If we find something interesting, or even stuff that has never been seen before, we will of course inform you. Well, other than that, I hope to return soon. I hope nobody dies. And I also hope to bring you some interesting pictures and information as well as data from the expedition. Other than that, let's go to Mind.
Hello, here's Lord Harold for you again, being whoever I need to be. So this week's been a very delayed one for me because I had a lot of unexpected things coming up with some family, and so I spent most of the week with my mom away from the computer. So when I finally got home, I tried to catch up on all of the role play that was, just kind of waiting. I still have Kadeen to follow up with, um, and the consequences of pulling her out of school. So currently the biggest news right now is Cecilia Harris is still communicating with the Duke about restructuring the Prismatic Imperium military in a way that allows commanding officers to command larger number of troops while being detached from the troops themselves. And I am still working on that, developing the characters, and I'm actually going to do an overhaul on the ones I've already uploaded that were there just for sampling. So if you're on the Diamond Market, of course, you can already take a look at the command tokens and see I just have a collection of characters there that are fully colored, and I am adding backgrounds to them. But their costumes are subject to change since these are kind of just stand-in. Um, so that's still progressing. I have a lot of characters to add, all of the familiar faces and some new ones. So, and then a lot of them are not going to show up until next season. So that's the biggest thing I'm working on. I also have pets that I'm working on, and of course I've been delayed on that as well. But focusing on adding a bunch of cute, useless stuff because people really do like their furry companions, even if they're not capable of battle. I don't recommend taking your cats and dogs to battle. I suppose you could, but I just don't recommend it. So bear with me as I add those in. Now with the roleplay story, things have been progressing a little bit this week. I'm pretty excited about the direction that the Vice Warden story has gone. It's now been tied to the main story, and right now there's not a lot going on with Ben specifically, but definitely focusing more on the political side for now to see where that leads into. So, of course, I've been delaying Ben as well since I've been away from the computer. Um, but interesting things should be happening this week, so keep an eye out and definitely get involved. This story requires other players contributing. And so that about wraps up this week. So really just a continuation of last week. And back to Jeff.
Thank you.
You know, since we have the opportunity to have the Lord Knight from Colonia here, wouldn't it be interesting if he tells us a little bit about his field of work?
That's actually a good point, something that I should have considered myself. But yeah,
Oh,
you're
the
right.
Aurora.
Yeah. Gene, is there anything you'd like to tell us about what's happening with Aurora, the frontier system that we never... Maybe he's not here. He doesn't seem to be unmuting. Oh, there he is.
Well, I mean, as it stands right now, we've pretty much been working on trying to reestablish our control over our station. We've been somewhat in conflict with a anarchy group that has come out to Colonia recently and has been stirring up some trouble out there. So our current activities involve trying to take out their authority over some local stations that they've gained control over because we're not really pro-anarchy out here.
Can I stop you for a second?
Yep.
To bring people up to speed, what's happened is the Prismatic Imperium's colony out there, which was for the citizens of Aurora, has actually been taken over. We no longer actually have control of Prisma Renata and the system.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we kind of started a little bit of a conflict war with that anarchy group, and they shortly thereafter targeted our system for attempting to try to push. They actually pushed Colonia Council, which is the NPC faction for the actual just game management of Colonia into power. So we're not against them being in power, but we really would like to reestablish control over our own system and just get some folks to follow up on taking out this anarchy faction, because we're not the anarchy. Well, it can be beneficial in some places. We don't think that it has a place in Colonia, because really it should be a community ran thing, and we're not really fond of the Nameless being in control of anything. Really shouldn't have an NPC faction controlling any kind of stations.
But it's the Nameless that control our system.
No, we pushed the Nameless out of our system, but the Nameless
Okay.
are. There's a player faction that's from what I actually think that they are a Imperial faction. But they came out to Colonia just as a random group and are pushing this anarchy faction, which I would think would be pretty much against the way that any Imperial faction would want things to go. But you know,
And
to each their own.
Who currently controls Prisma Renata in this moment?
Prisma Renata right now is, as far as I know, last time I checked, it may have switched. There was some war stuff going on right now. Prisma Renata is currently under Colonial Council control. We do still have control over Napier Laboratory, so we kept control of that over the last war time period. But Colonial Council is getting pushed by this other faction pretty heavily. So,
Okay.
if you have the ability to head out to Colonia and want to give some support and aid to help us push Colonial Council back down, by all means.
That is something that for people who are of an adventurous spirit, they could help with our Colonia initiative, which is run by Lord Knight Ramirez. So please, if you want to help, you want an excuse to go out to Colonia, that's a very good thing to do. Anyway,
we'll always enjoy some help out there.
Yeah. Moving forward, Missler. By the way, I'm really sorry. It's like 2 weeks in a row I've made a mistake with you. The first time I called you Meisler for some reason. And now this time I forgot your title. I was so focused on Missler that I forgot your title. So,
it's fine.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on in my brain just now. Anyway, so for about the expedition, I hope you're having fun. It's good to see people. It's good to see people from different backgrounds doing some exploration. Have you done much exploration in the past?
A little bit here and there. The problem with me is that it always brings me back to the bubble because there's obviously stuff that I want to do there. So I'm pretty happy with the duration for this expedition that is planned, because heading out for a week, focusing on exploration, and then being back without missing too much, that's a nice compromise for me.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised you came with us.
Unfortunately, I wasn't
there's
around
nothing to shoot out here.
I wasn't around yesterday when you winged up, so it was all lonely catch up for me so far. But I hope we see each other over the next days.
Yeah, I mean, having planned meetups and stuff is always a good thing to do. I mean, I really enjoyed those kind of things during Distant Worlds.
There's just one big question: who does the paperwork back in the university now?
That did occur. I was actually saving that for when I move on to your news. So I'll get on that later.
Oh God.
So we now have NPC and PC vice wardens. I think that this was something that I was always concerned about when it became obvious that Benjamin was starting to go a bit crazy in the Senate and things. I mean, one of the things that I raised also in the High Council was that I would not like to see a player punished for his character's actions. I mean, like that being on the High Council, you get there because of who you are and what you do as a person, not based on what your character necessarily does.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I would not like to see the player of Ben punished for the action, and that was a concern. And people told me right away, "Don't worry about it," and I still continue to be worried about it. But the solution that you've come up with is actually a really good one that kind of works around the roleplay aspect of it, so that there is a situation where Ben is no longer the vice warden, but Ben is still the vice warden, like our character, and he still has that position. He's still in the High Council, he still can talk with us and stuff. But we have an NPC vice warden to take care of the fact that Ben has moved off in a different direction. So I was actually quite pleased with that solution. I'm looking forward to hearing more about your announcement, although I can kind of guess a little bit about it from the fact that it's a PvP Shipwatch Fighter event in mid-November, but I do look forward to hearing more news about that during the week, and we can discuss it in the next episode. Techie, congratulations on launching the expedition. I have to confess, Techie's done this all by himself. I was supposed to help him, but he organized the entire expedition alone.
I'm. That's no problem. I
kind of always suspected that would be the case because you're there and you're the guy that's going to be doing it. So I did suspect that you would kind of start plotting it, plotting the route, not plotting as in politics, but plotting the route.
I've led the branch alone for over 1 year, so it was no problem to organize that.
Okay.
Just that map that took me a little bit of time because it was annoying. Never saved it.
Yeah, but it's always the graphics that take the most time, isn't it? You can come up with a plan very quickly, but then putting that plan onto graphics. You should take my kind of paint approach to graphics, which I know Kevin's a big fan of.
I am. Big fan.
Show me one sample, please.
I'm sure you've seen my stuff over the years. As for interesting discoveries, I mean, I do know from actually being a famed explorer that you do find a lot of things actually within the nebula. So if you
I've looked through the codex yet, but I didn't find anything. I'll have to consult EDSM.
I just explore inside nebula, and I very often come across things whilst I'm there. I've been very lucky recently, and I had one day a couple of weeks ago where I found like 5 different things in one day. I found like an Earth-like world. I found those things.
Yeah, you see, yes, actually. Yesterday we had a pretty interesting discovery already at the first waypoint. It was a water world, a ringed water world with 7 moons.
That was nice. Yeah, no, I like these. I mean, in game, and also from my background, I'm a big fan of games, depiction of solar systems and things. And people who think that the random generation approach is very boring, I think are crazy. I think that we do need more stuff in game, but I also think that what is there is fantastic because I appreciate it from a scientific point of view.
Yeah, I love it as well.
Yeah, I don't always agree with all the things that I see, and I know some things just wouldn't work out, but generally...
Like that gas giant that's just a few light seconds away from its star.
Yeah, that's... It could happen, but its lifespan would be very short.
Yeah.
Very short.
It would melt.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes?
Would you be willing, whenever you upload these absolutely beautiful discoveries, to also include the nebula you found it in?
Yes, if that happens.
Well, that should be standard.
Yeah, please do, because I actually am turning your screenshots into future commission tiles.
Because the problem is where I am, there's very little name. So I
don't need a name of like specifically where you are, but just like a general.
Yeah, but even then,
system.
I was in the Acheron sector, so I'm like in the sector next to. I'm on the other side of the galaxy. I've just passed from the Acheron sector into the Vales. Yeah. So.
Did you hear that? The Lord Herod wants to make profit from your discovery pictures.
No, there's a percentage involved. That's like non-negotiable. Yeah.
Can you even admire the beautiful shots and not selling them instantly?
No. So I only think about what can I do for roleplay.
I was looking at some of the stuff that I posted recently because I was looking at some of my Reddit posts and I saw that I've put a lot of decent stuff up recently. That's actually
So I mean, right this very minute, I am creating commissions. So
Just remember, anything and everything you post to the Prismatic Imperium Discord becomes property of the Prismatic Imperium upon entry.
Oh, that's entirely true.
Everything you post here is subject of
Actually-
the branch of mind.
Anything you post anywhere, because I asked people on the Elite Dangerous Community Facebook group, like, hey, how do you feel about me using your screenshots for this project I'm working on? I pretty much got no replies outside of members
I
of the
remember
Prismatic
that
Imperium.
post. I remember
So,
that post.
I'm like, you know what? Nobody cares. We don't even make any profit off this, so I'm just
Yeah.
gonna do it.
There's no money involved. Anyway,
There's
yeah,
no
Kevin.
money.
So on to you. You said a lot of things. Some of it we touched on last time. With the
Mhm.
structure in Cecilia, Kekila, Harris.
What?
I don't know.
Oh,
how do you-
Cecilia.
Cecilia. No,
You know,
because
like
in
Sicily?
yeah, but in Italy, like a name written like that would be pronounced Cecilia.
Oh, that's fun.
Cecilia would actually be the closest name.
I mean, I'm curious how you pronounce
That's-
Alicia.
Alicia.
Yeah,
It's-
I mean, that's more of a Spanish take,
Yeah.
which is what I wanted to go for. But yeah, continue.
Yep. So we kind of touched a bit on that the last episode. Also about the samplings and the command tokens. Pets. What are we doing with pets? I know
So
people like these things. I personally don't, but I know some people do like.
people had been asking for it on quite a few occasions, and
Yeah.
so I decided to go ahead and do a commission for it, and assumed that if it passes, I'd get started right on that.
Is it like
it
space
passed.
puppies and space kittens?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, I don't know what people are gonna do with it, but originally the only pet like that was Marcus DePalo's cat, Mr. Sniffle Meow,
Oh yeah.
which I mean was kind of a joke, but also it was his cat and it was relevant to the story. But my personal opinion with things like this is if it doesn't have any factor on role play sessions, then I think it's okay. It's safe to say you have whatever pet you want to claim you have.
Yeah.
You know, be it dogs or cats. Um, and so it really is kind of a waste of resources. But I mean, people really want to display these pets, and I understand that. And I did find a way around it by saying in the commission that there are people who want to put up pets onto the diamond market for the chance that those pets will be owned by a commander. That was just my excuse for justifying why it would be on the diamond market in the first place.
So we can have like kennels, the people who
Yeah.
make dogs for their diamonds.
Yep, that's essentially what's happening.
Okay.
Well, I have my trained Mortis Claw and I love to cuddle with it.
You what?
But you
Even
know,
though
I
it's
just
poisonous.
I just want to take this opportunity to say that if you want a pet, and you know, I'm not going to have everything on the diamond market, even though I'm going to be adding some critters on there. They're still going to be pretty generic. Um, you can make these claims yourself in your narrative that says what you have, and if I'm up for it, I will try to honor that by actually creating whatever you claim you have and just give it to you.
Are dinosaurs included?
No, so if it has impact on sessions, that's where that's where I get more strict and say this is something you need to buy.
Yeah.
And that's really just to hold our members accountable so that they're not just inventing. I mean, we're not really an anime where you just create things out of nowhere. You know,
I have this robotic cat that can
It's
open
like-
doors.
oh,
Yeah,
you've defeated
I know
me.
some
Cans.
I know some people are disappointed by our lack of anime direction, given the fact that we have an anime princess.
Right.
as our-
Hey, and I do my best to to really dance around the subject, but what I really don't want in roleplay is once you've been defeated in roleplay, you're like, oh well, I just happen to have this surprise hand cannon you never knew about, like plot twist after plot twist, like you'd see in an anime.
Yeah,
that
but
was
that,
had
that's
a lot of
why
episodes.
that's kind of why role playing rules and things developed. You know, is
Yeah,
to avoid
and
that kind of situation.
I'm trying not to be too heavy on the rules,
Yeah.
just to make it approachable for people. So I think the diamond market solves a lot of problems for me, and it also kind of sets the mood for things that are pretty close to canon.
Yeah.
I mean, the companies that we're using, I think I've said this before, are
I don't remember if you've
are
said
all
it
real.
in an episode or in another conversation. Like,
Okay,
'cause we do have conversation when we finish
right.
recording. So I don't remember.
The things on the diamond market are definitely inspired by actual things that would be in Elite Dangerous, whether it's just concept, including like the sight vehicles. So those I didn't just make them up. There, you can go back and in fact you can find those publicly just through concept art. That doesn't mean that they'd actually be in the game um, ever at any time, but it is reasonable that it could exist, and so it works for our role play.
But
That
you're
is my
working
goal.
as close to canon, even when you're inventing. You're taking like inspiration from canon sources,
Yes.
or possibly canon sources.
Yes.
Okay.
And I just really want us to be as I mean, my whole goal since I even started doing art for Elite Dangerous, which is what brought me here to this group in the first place, is that opportunity to kind of just add more to the universe of Elite Dangerous, because I can tell it is rich. It just wasn't good at communicating that, especially when I first got started. Um, and at the same time, I'm battling against uh, other sci-fi influences invading Elite Dangerous, because I think there's something really special that Elite Dangerous has that a lot of sci-fi does not.
Yeah.
That serious approach to realism without, but it was still being creative.
It's a line that it's kind of walked since Frontier came out, like the second Elite game, which is they've
Yeah.
tried to marry. The first game was just crazy. The second game, the second game, they tried to be scientific. I mean, they were in the mid-90s, and they had
Yeah.
a lot of limitations, but they still tried to be as accurate as they could at that time. In fact, maybe even the second and the third games were actually too accurate, because I know there was a lot of criticism of combat and things because they were just so sciencey that it
Right.
was boring. But yeah, I think you're right. I think some other franchises touch upon it now, like with the Expanse and things. I mean, a lot of people have said, "Oh, the Expanse." Babylon 5 actually tried it as well back in the 90s. They were very sciencey. In fact, Babylon 5 looks a lot like the kind of space stations that we find in the game. Not because we borrowed from there, but because they both went to the original, which was the Anil class station, which is a concept for a space station based on rotation that provides gravity, and that's why
Right.
stations in the game and Babylon 5 itself is a
Right.
new class station, but both of those solutions came from looking actually at the original source, which was a proposal for a space station back in the 70s. So yeah, there are other places that touch on it, but I do like that kind of. It's kind of trying to marry realism with creativity, and I think it does a
Right.
really good job.
And I really want to give it, that credit by trying to push that in our own narratives.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to touch on from the things that you said was the role play story with the Vice Warden.
Yeah.
This is actually a criticism, and it's not a criticism. I mean, I said as well when you took over that, I can't remember if I said it in a chat or in the show or whatever, but I said at some point to somebody, good that now it's kind of in professional hands. But on the other hand, I was thinking about that, and it's a shame as well in a certain respect that it's been tied into the main story, because one of the things that we've tried to encourage for a long time is for people to do their own independent stories, and I think
Well,
I do understand.
it's still an independent story. I asked for
Yeah.
permission before I did it, but
Yeah, he did.
the goal is not to hijack
Totally
the story.
fine.
It's
No.
that my narrative is built on people doing their own thing.
Yep.
And so I'm basically just asking permission to, hey, the story was moving along a little slow, and I haven't helped it much yet because I've been gone.
Yeah.
But I'm like, can I have permission to actually tie this into some really sensitive characters that otherwise would be very difficult to do, just because of the nature of the specific story. So
I
it
do.
is still entirely in the
No,
player's hands.
I know. I do think it's. I do think. I mean, my initial reaction kind of tied in was like, oh, it's now in Kevin's hands, so that's a good thing. But then thinking about it, my criticism, and I'm doing like that finger quote thing.
Mhm.
So you can't see it on radio, but my criticism was from the fact that we should be encouraging people to do the kind of thing that Ben did, and it's
Yeah.
kind of a shame. I feel as though I've been very antagonistic towards Ben, like in private conversation and relationships, but that's mainly because of a conflict over lore, which has been bothering me, and that's kind of we had a big conversation about that in General Council a few days
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah, and I am going to. I don't think I can talk yet, but I'm going to do so anyway. Um,
No, it's okay.
yeah, no, I
Let's-
actually.
Wait 1 second. Cue discussion music, Techie. Right, now we're officially in the discussion part, so now you're free to go, Ben.
All right. Well, one thing too is that I was kind of worried at times because I did get a little antagonistic energy from you, but I could tell that it just because of what I know from what I know about you that wasn't the case. But too, another reason I kept kind of bugging you about it is because I don't know a lot about the lore in Elite Dangerous, and I don't know a lot as much as I'd like to. Part of the reason I kept kind of poking you is because I do know that you're very knowledgeable in that regard. Because of that, I was trying to kind of bug you to get a better understanding, and I think that worked to some extent, especially with my understanding of the Adamantine Union and our own lore.
I think right. I think some of the problem comes from my assumption that people know things that they don't necessarily know. I also have a suspicion, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I suspect that sometimes if people give a long explanation, you don't read it all. You try to get the highlight from it, and you don't read every single line. That's a suspicion I've had for a couple of weeks, and it's kind of
yeah, that's kind of true. And I mean, there are times where it's like, if I read an article and the first paragraph, I'm of the opinion that the first paragraph or so should always describe the article. So if I read that first paragraph and it's stupid, I'm not going to read the rest of it. And additionally, it's kind of like with Odo. If you start out about how I'm insulting you, then no, nothing good can come of the rest of that. Well, I'm not going to waste my time doing it.
Because unfortunately, because I kind of got that suspicion because I was describing the lore of the Adamantine Union and how it ties into PI, and I realized I have actually explained this to you a few times, but given the conversation that we had a few days ago, I genuinely understood that you hadn't heard a lot of that before, and I thought I've already told them. And I thought, kind of what happens is that whole meme TLDR, too long didn't read, and what I suspected was some of the explanations that myself and other people have given you. I've kind of got that response from you. It's if we write you a long thought out response as to what's happening, you kind of just skim it. Anyway, so yes.
One other thing too, and this is
Yep.
When you're explaining lore, especially to me, who's kind of impatient, just be describe it in one sentence. Yeah, Adamantine Union is literally the Prismatic Imperium. Sometimes it goes so long that
I think that's kind of what finally I basically said that at one point. But again, it kind of highlights something we've discussed a fair bit recently is that we should work on making our lore, especially key parts of it, a little bit more accessible. I honestly said a few days ago we should have a cool video. It's a nice video with nice music. It's about 5 minutes long that explains the PI now and how it got there, so this kind of confusion doesn't happen again. But it kind of does kind of tie into the roleplay thing, and that it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes people should know the basics of the lore. and that's kind of on us to make that as accessible as we can. There is a certain onus on the people who are taking part, and that they should know some of it before they take part. But so anyway, discussion points. Okay, something I kind of touched on very briefly in the news was the post. I don't know if you guys have seen it. Does anybody feel like a beefy campaign would do Elite Dangerous some good? This is something that's been touched on basically since Elite Dangerous's launch. We've often heard the phrase Elite Dangerous is a mile wide and an inch deep. And part of that comes from people who feel like we should have some kind of campaign. What do other people think about this?
I didn't see that particular post that you mentioned,
Yeah.
but I know that the topic has come up
You've
several
heard the
times,
argument.
especially since they took the effort and integrated this new player experience with the last patch, which obviously is a pretty good addition. But I've also seen it come up multiple times that there are a lot of suggestions to expand on this and to go even further. Like currently, it's mostly a tutorial telling you how to play the game, but it could go so much further in giving you basic introduction to how the universe works, like what is the Empire, what is the Federation, or give you a first ship so that you actually have a rewarding moment and a little bit of a progression in there and stuff like this.
That kind of stuff would be nice. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
I'm in the same place there. Something that's carefully crafted. Obviously, not an individual hero's journey, but something that just really gives you some context to the whole galaxy.
Yeah, but again, I mean that's kind of like elaborating on the new player experience. But I mean, one thing I've always liked about Elite Dangerous is like your own journey is your own journey. And I mean, even if I was taking part in something like Distant Worlds, I was one pilot in it. I wasn't the hero of
that's
it.
cool and all, but I think that because of that model, we lose so many potential people who could be playing this game.
Yeah, but I don't think that we have to change the game's identity to. I mean,
That's why
and also, I mean, the thing is, like,
it's carefully done. It can't be a hero's journey.
Doing it this way is very. Doing it the way that we currently do it, I get what you mean. It's less pop, it's less popular, but it means like my journey is my journey. What I've done and the things that I've seen are mine. They're not something that anybody else has done, and it's because we've generated our own stories. We've created the PI. I've gone in DW2, and even then, my journey through that was mine. Like thousands of other people did the same journey that I did. Each of their journeys was unique to them, and they have the credit. It's kind of like I was a big fan of the KOTOR, like the Knights of the Old Republic, and I was ecstatic when the Old Republic came out, the MMORPG. But very quickly, I became disillusioned by the fact that, I mean, my journey was exactly the same as thousands of other people's journeys. Like I'd earned this title because of actions that I'd done, and thousands of other people had the exact same title because they'd run through the same story. So my story wasn't unique to me, and I think that's something special that Elite Dangerous does. And I wouldn't like them to have a crafted campaign that everybody does, that everybody ends up being the hero of the great Federation Imperial War. So
if we could just take a step back for a second, because I thought the whole point of this this post on the crafting a story was specifically about rank grinding. Am I incorrect? Did I read that wrong?
No, it's right. From the quote that I gave, and it was it's kind of been repeated a few times by different people, which was from DMC 831, was part of. It wasn't his entire post. I just chose a quote to give.
Okay.
And it's like, yeah, I've wanted them to replace the current rank grind with a TIE Fighter or Wing Commander-esque mini campaign for the Feds. And that was just one person's idea.
And that could actually be an interesting idea, because generally I agree with you, Jeff. I mean, the people who say that Elite Dangerous is a mile wide and inch deep are the people who haven't taken the time to probe more than an inch deep.
Well, I think I think that criticism was true.
It was at some
Was true for 1.0, for Elite Dangerous 1.0. That I think that was a fair criticism at the time. But
yes,
the
but that's a
game-
criticism that's still being leveled today.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the game has come a long way since then. And yeah, it's
Agreed.
a criticism that's still leveled today. But I mean, it's
I
again that
think-
whole thing, like you get one chance to make a first impression, and Elite Dangerous' first impression was that. And I think it was a fair criticism at the time. I don't
Yeah,
think it now.
And I personally think that if they're going to do something along the lines where they're going to try to introduce the players into the game in, say, like a single player environment where they're learning about the different aspects of it, they really need to look at the different ways that people are currently playing the game, get the community involved in the process of them creating this, and actually have the players go, okay, well, here's how we're currently playing Elite Dangerous. Here's how people are playing the game. This is what you should tutorialize so that way people can understand what's there, because probably 85-90% of the people who are starting to play Elite Dangerous, if you say the word power play to them, they'd be completely clueless to it. They've probably never accessed the menu. They don't know where it is. They don't know what it's about. And so at that aspect, a core part of the game that adds a huge amount of depth to it is completely alien to a huge part of the population coming into the game. And if you could create a tutorial that goes, okay, well, here's, the Empire, here's the Federation, here's the Alliance, this is what the power play is about, who's going to control the universe and the governments in the universe, that could create just a tutorial where you can pick which side of that war you want to fight with. Maybe they introduce the players to the individual factions, to the leaders, and what they represent inside the game's lore, so that way players can actually get involved with the lore of the game before they're even really a part of the multiplayer community.
Whilst
The
I
codex already
agree,
helps on that a
sorry,
bit.
Techie. Whilst I agree that the new player experience should be expanded, I don't think we should expand it to such an extent. I mean, not because I disagree with your main point, which is people should learn more about these things, but I don't think that would be the way to do it, because it would turn the new player experience. It would be like an 80-hour campaign to explain all the different ways that people, and I'm just talking about the most popular ways. I'm not even talking about all the kind of really weird things that some people get up to. Just like the main things that people can do in the game. I mean, it is enormous. I think trying to explain to people and through a new player tutorial experience would blow up that tutorial to an extent where it would cease to be useful and probably overwhelm any new player.
I don't know. I mean, I think if they're going to create a single player campaign that's going to teach people how to play the game, I would expect it to have a reasonable level of depth to it and a reasonable amount of player experience involved.
I think a campaign is going a little too far. If you think of it less as a campaign, but more of a crafted quest line, which I think a lot of us agree that Elite Dangerous could use a little bit more of. If you have a crafted quest line of somebody's progression through the Federal Navy or the Imperial Navy, that's a good way to introduce people as well to the different players in the game outside of just reading the codex, which I think is a great addition that nobody's mentioned here yet.
Yeah.
True.
If I could
Yeah,
say
I'm
something.
in the same thought.
Sure.
If I could say something, what I was thinking about this thing is, well, maybe not like a huge tutorial, but maybe like a little missions that have dialogue in them.
Yeah, that's kind of similar to something I was just thinking about as well.
Yeah, like after you get your first large ship, then a person comes with you and says in your inbox, "Hey, here's a special mission, very specialized to large ships." Or if you get an Asp Explorer, the message comes in, "Hey, I've got a special mission for you. Go to this nebula using your exploration ship."
No, I think you're right. I think
give you a little bit of a dialogue.
Because I know that Drew actually wrote a lot of the missions for the game, but the thing is that, I mean, people do kind of just skim the text to see what we need to do. I mean, Drew wrote some really interesting things, but people are just tired of text. I mean, they like to hear the voices. I mean, this was something that came into computer games in the 90s, and I think even Frontier had some of this. Like the second game, they had it on a CD-ROM. And like some of the missions and stuff, they were spoken. So, like, why can't we do that now? And I think it would add a lot of depth. I can understand to a certain extent there's a lot more work involved in getting voice actors in, but yeah. I think
they do a load of voice acting for combat zones, though. If you actually go into a combat zone and listen, you actually hear a lot of voice chatter.
True.
And they're already spending the resources for voice actors for the tutorial.
Yep.
Voice acting is definitely heavy on space, though. Elite Dangerous is quite a large game.
Which is why I think instead of a massive campaign explaining everything what you do one after the other, it would overload people. So rather have something that triggers as they freely roam through space, they eventually stumble upon it.
I think there's something to be said for giving people an idea about how big the game is, but we shouldn't spoon feed all of that to them. And it's one of those things like the more you play, the more you get back from it. So there is an aspect of discovery. Which we shouldn't.
And
it should
be
the
voice acting stuff for the individual things could be kind of shoehorned a little bit into just doing a nondescript voice acting for the individual mission types, but not making it a specific voice script for every type of mission and explaining all things.
Yeah, but also like special rewards for these unique missions, like a 6A FSD, for example. Because I know some people complain that they find difficulty finding a A-rated FSD when they don't have Shinrata. So have one of these quests provide one. It's a once-off quest. You won't get it again. It's a one little story quest.
Yeah, no, I think things like this touch upon part of what people are asking for. But one of the key things, I think a specific quest in a very careful kind of way could be okay, but something big like TIE Fighter or Wing Commander, like mini campaigns and these kind of things, I think would something that we've discussed a few times in the past is like the soul of the game, and I think that I don't know exactly. If you ask me to define what the soul of the game is, I honestly couldn't give you an answer, but I know what isn't, and like a campaign, a traditional RPG style campaign, it would not be part of whatever definition for the soul of the game would be that I would come up with. So that's my...
Unless they separate it into two different games.
Yeah, that won't happen.
If you would double up the profits, you can buy Elite Dangerous twice. Elite Dangerous, and then Elite Dangerous Command Fighter.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I did actually play a game that was kind of like this, and I think it was called Line Wars, and it was using assets. It was using like assets from the original Elite game in the late 80s, 90s to set up a multiplayer game, and it was called Line Wars, and I only came across it at university, mid 90s, and it was fun but limited. That's how I would describe it. Anyway, another thing I wanted to... This is actually a point from last week that is still in my notes because it kind of touches a little bit on this and also is an interesting topic in its own right, which is the effect of stories. Last week, last episode, we discussed a little bit about the stories from Frontiers Communications. And it was one of the things that I am very interested in because I speak to people, or I spoke to people before I burned all my bridges. But I used to speak to people behind the scenes about things. And I do know that one of the things that Frontier is heavily criticized for, and it was a criticism, this is how it came into last week's notes, was about the Scourge and how people feel like there isn't a story there. But I know for a fact that some of the stories have changed and that the players have impact. So how are we doing that? I mean, how can we be doing it? Why is it that players in Elite Dangerous don't feel as though they're actually having an impact on the stories that Frontier tells?
I guess because they don't see what the alternative endings were.
Yeah, but that wouldn't happen anyway. I mean, if D&D campaign with Kevin as the GM. I mean, if Kevin has a story that he thinks is going to go in a certain direction, and then it doesn't because of actions that the players do, maybe Kevin will tell us what was supposed to happen, but very often he won't. He let us live in the
Precisely.
universe that we created.
And because most of us here in this chat room now, of course, are experienced to a thing called role play. A lot of the people playing Elite Dangerous aren't used to that concept. They're not used to the concept of, okay, this has happened, now nothing else will happen. This has happened. We're going to go on to the next thing on this branch. They don't understand the concept of, oh, they can't go back and have an alternative ending. They're used to other games that they can single player, start from the beginning of the campaign and choose the other option.
Yeah, I remember doing that with Coulter.
And so that's why people don't feel this difference. And also the other differences also is that there's so many players at the same time doing things. So you don't really, you feel disassociated with what you're doing because you're only doing a little grain of sand on the mountain of sand.
Yeah.
Weighing down the scale in one direction.
Yeah, but could Frontier be doing something that would let players feel like together they've collectively had an impact on the stories?
I'd say maybe the what shall I call it? I'd say we would have had an impact in excuse me, my brain is suddenly gone blank. The Enclave, maybe, because we all worked on really quickly there and got things done, and it felt good, you know.
Yeah, no, I
got something done there, but I don't know.
Yeah, sorry, Techie, what was
The-
it you wanted to say?
The number one event where players actually had an effect was that one with Salome.
Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah, that was quite. It was quite popular.
Yeah, but
as well.
Salome was famous because it wasn't actually a Frontier Developments thing. It was entirely done by Drew with some help from Frontier when they realized some things were so broken he couldn't actually do what he planned to do with the current game mechanics because some of the current game mechanics were currently actually broken. So in that sense, Frontier helped them to fix some of the things so that wings and things could happen to an extent. But that was entirely an independent storyline that had popular support because of Drew has a platform to communicate with people from being an official writer.
And that's something I think.
Yeah.
That's something I think Frontier can do a little bit better, reintegrating community stories. Now, I know they used to have writers from the community who wrote the Galnet articles. I kind of understand why they went away from that, but also, as much of a rag Sagittarius A is, it does comment on things that are going on within the community, and that lack of instant feedback in the game, I think, is what puts a lot of people off. That's why they don't think they're having an impact on the galaxy, when the truth is there's a lot of these little stories that are going on between individual player groups or individual people, major superpowers, if you want to look at it that way, that don't get recognized in the game, and it's in these third-party resources. I think bringing that back into the Galnet a little bit more could help with that perception that nothing's going on in the galaxy.
Yeah, we were very lucky as a group because despite the fact we're not one of the bigger, more famous groups, we've actually had official recognition on a couple of occasions now. So we are actually very lucky, but we are also a minority because we have had official recognition either through Kevin or through Drew in his book or through like our CG, but we are very much a minority in the fact that we are a group that has been officially recognized, not simply the fact we have a player minor faction, but also because we have had official news reported in official Galnet and we've had from.
But I think to my point is, when was the last time that happened, and when will the next time be?
Yeah, but even then, we are a minority. The point is that doesn't happen for every group. Even though
it doesn't, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I agree with you. And what I mean is simply like we should also recognize we are a minority. We've been very lucky that we've had that recognition in the past, but it's not a common occurrence.
Yeah, I was just thinking for a second. Was there ever any Galnet articles about the fuel rats?
Yeah, the fuel rats are a bit of a darling.
Yeah, there were several.
Oh, okay.
But that's kind of fair enough to an extent.
The fuel rats also get actual press.
Yeah.
Why is that not shared for more players? more player groups.
Right.
And there's quite a lot of player groups. I know they can't give attention to every single player group in the game.
I think the reason that the fuel rats get, and I am not dissing the fuel rats at all, is because of the kind of the nature of the work that they do.
give.
Yeah, the service they give warrants a certain amount of press, and it does. I mean, it's generated press also in the game, and it's generated as Fairview said, it's generated like some real press as well, because it is a very noble thing that the fuel rats do. So I do understand why they're probably the only group that I don't begrudge the kind of attention that they've been. There are some groups I'm like, whenever I see their names pop up, I'm like, talking about those guys again. I'm not going to name names here, but there are groups that I think do get a little bit preferential treatment. But I'm sure some people said the same about us back in the day when we were like the Ashling Darlings for Frontier. So I've been both the bad guy and the good guy on that. But yeah, I can say, but it's just so many of us. I mean, how would you? What system would you use to recognize as many players as possible? It's not an easy thing.
Just because I think we should at least mention it, I probably not the right thing to discuss in that regard, but it should at least be mentioned. Remember that there is a regular, is it monthly? Is it even weekly? Live stream by Frontier with featured commanders. So there is at least some effort to highlight groups or special players.
Yeah. I've applied for us for that. I've applied for about 2 months ago. I wrote an application
cool.
for us for that. Specifically, it was like the last time we had a conversation about how people keep thinking the Prismatic Imperium is an NPC group, which is I consider a measure of success because people do recognize us, but I consider it a failure in that they don't know that there are actually people behind that success. So, and I did write that in the application. It's like I want people to recognize we are really people. There are players behind this group.
Oh, great! Now I have to go and wash my suit.
What did you? I'm not going to ask. Was the president coming to visit you or something? I'm just not going to go there.
But if we really make it in front of the camera, we have to.
Is that a blue suit?
No, my headmaster suit.
Oh, okay.
Is it because of all the bio waste?
Hey,
Is it because of the girl that came to visit?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Anyway,
he needs to get it. He needs to get it cleaned and pressed.
I have to say, guys, this has been a most pleasurable hour. I do think it's a lot of fun, and I do think it's great that this hour passes so quickly. So quickly, I actually have to check the time because I don't want to run over. But we're currently in danger of doing so. So thank you, everybody, for your participation in tonight's show. I have been Jeff Ryan, and this has been the Prismatic Congress. Decky, music.
You don't have to mention it. I know what to do.
People were yawning.
Yeah, that's a problem. A big problem.
I blame the host.
I too.
Wait, aren't you the host?
Yeah.